Hello again, my loyal viewers and newcomers alike. I am Dark Zaz, and this channel is dedicated to exploring theology through history and philosophy. I am not here to attack or discredit anybody's beliefs, only to broaden the conversation and encourage thoughtful, open-minded dialogue. Disclaimer: this script draws on mainstream Islamic history, early non-Muslim sources, and modern academic scholarship. Some points represent majority scholarly views, others remain debated. This is not claiming Muhammad invented Islam or that the Qur'an is fabricated. Rather, it explains how Muhammad's image, message, and legacy were shaped, edited, and expanded by later tradition. For deeper study, consult scholars such as Fred Donner, Patricia Crone, Gabriel Said Reynolds, Michael Cook, and the Encyclopedia of Islam. We tend to imagine Muhammad as a fully formed figure, the final prophet, morally perfected, delivering a complete system from heaven in one seamless movement. But history doesn't work that way. Just like Jesus, Muhammad reaches us not directly, but through layers of memory, theology, and empire. The man who lived in 7th century Arabia is not identical to the figure preserved in later Islamic tradition. Between those two lies a long process of interpretation and sometimes correction. Here is the first problem. We don't have a contemporary biography of Muhammad. Not one. Muhammad dies around 632 CE. The first full biography of his life, the Sīra, was written by Ibn Ishaq more than a century later. And even that biography didn't survive intact. What we have comes from Ibn Hisham, who openly admits that he removed stories he found embarrassing, offensive, or theologically problematic. This matters, because by the time these stories are written down, Islam is no longer a persecuted movement. It is an empire. And empires don't preserve messy prophets, they refine them. Early non-Muslim sources written closer to Muhammad's lifetime tell a different story. Some describe him as a political leader. Others are confused about whether he was alive during the Arab conquests. None present the fully developed prophetic figure, familiar from later Islamic tradition. What we inherit then is not a direct window, but a curated portrait. Islamic tradition describes Muhammad receiving revelation through the angel Gabriel. But the earliest accounts are far less tidy. Muhammad experiences crushing pressure, fear, sweating, collapse. He initially believes something has gone wrong, that he may be possessed or harmed. These are not the reactions of someone certain he is a cosmic figure. They resemble ancient prophetic trance states, familiar across the Near East. Only later does this experience become systematized, sanitized, and conveniently labeled as angelic visitation. The ambiguity disappears. The fear becomes certain. The prophet becomes sure. History shows us the opposite direction of development. One of the biggest gaps between early Islam and later theology is the idea of perfection. The Qur'an itself repeatedly shows Muhammad being corrected by God. He is told he frowned, told he turned away, told not to rush revelation, told to seek confirmation, told he might be mistaken. These verses make sense in an early movement centered on warning and reform. They make far less sense in a later system that needs Muhammad to be morally and spiritually flawless. So, theology steps in, and reinterpretation begins. Muslims are often told the Quran has been perfectly preserved, word for word, since Muhammad's lifetime. But early Islamic history tells a more complicated story. After Muhammad's death, the Quran existed in multiple recitations in written forms. Disputes arose, so the Caliph Uthman ordered a standard version compiled, and all others destroyed. That is not preservation in the modern sense. It's canonization. Early manuscripts show variant readings, missing vowel marks, and ambiguous consonantal texts. Meaning was stabilized over time, not frozen instantly. Again, this doesn't make the Quran unique. It makes it human. Muhammad's message changes over time because his circumstances change. In Mecca, he is an apocalyptic preacher, a moral critic, a social reformer with no political power. In Medina, he becomes something else: a judge, a lawgiver, a military commander. Legal rulings appear, punishments are enforced, warfare is organized. Later tradition flattens this progression into a single image, but history doesn't. The Muhammad of Mecca and the Muhammad of Medina are not interchangeable. They reflect a movement evolving into a state. Here's something rarely mentioned. The Quran portrays Muhammad as performing no miracles. When asked for signs, he says the revelation itself is enough. Yet later Islamic tradition surrounds him with miracles, splitting the moon, supernatural knowledge, wonders that mirror those attributed to earlier prophets. It's a familiar pattern. Charismatic leaders become miracle workers after their deaths, not during their lifetimes. The Quran's imagery of hell is vivid, violent, and urgent. But this reflects an apocalyptic worldview, the belief that judgment is imminent. These images are meant to shock, not map the afterlife in detail. Over time, metaphor becomes geography, warning becomes doctrine, fear becomes structure. Muhammad was not a myth. Neither was he the finished product later tradition presents. He was a man shaped by his time, responding to crisis, power, fear, and conviction. His legacy grew not in a vacuum, but through memory, theology, and empire. History doesn't erase prophets. It reminds us they were human before they were icons. Thank you all for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will see you in the shadows that history has tried so hard to forget.